Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jenny Bragel from TechServe Alliance. Welcome to the Certification Webinar Series. Today's webinar is Your Best Business. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, so feel free to write in any questions you would like to have answered in the question box on the right side of your screen. Also, we are recording today's presentation and it will be available to TechServe members on our online learning center of the website. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for the day, Barb Bruno, President of Good as Gold Training. Barb?
Thanks so much, and I'm very pleased to be with all of you today, and I think the topic today is extremely relevant because we're going to talk about your best business. And obviously, everything you're doing now during the month of December truly impacts what's going to happen next year, because everything you're doing now, basically runs into January of next year, so there's no better time to really start thinking about what is your best business. So what we're going to do today is we're going to address 4 different topics. Number 1, how does the TSA certification program help us better serve you? Who are your best clients? Who are your best candidates? And what's the best version of you? So let's start out talking about the TSA certification and how the TSA certification has helped TSA better serve you, the members. I've always, in my training, always promoted getting testimonials and recommendations. And I think testimonials are more valuable than anything that I could possibly say. And we've had so many testimonials from the individuals who have passed the CPSR and CPSAE exam and are now more successful, but wanted to share an owner's perspective with you. And I have to tell you, I was just doing some certification for a large company, and it was interesting because I was doing the certification training, and something I had trained in the morning, one of the recruiters came to me at lunchtime and said, oh my God, I used something that you just taught us in the certification training, and it worked. And so here's somebody that actually implemented one of the ideas almost immediately after she heard it. But I want to share this owner's perspective with you. And this was written to TSA. We are extremely pleased with the TechServe Professional Certification Program. It allows us to confidentially market to our clients the value add of our services and demonstrates our commitment to the industry and to our clients' businesses. Our staff is coming to recognize the value of their certification. They appreciate the confidence that we place in them to help us grow our business as well as to enhance their own careers. I think anyone making IT staffing their career should seek to become TechServe certified. It sets them apart from others and demonstrates their knowledge, understanding, and commitment to their industry. Certification will enhance their career, respect, and compensation. See, the bottom line here is the individuals who are earning their CPSR or CPSAE certification are increasing sales and profits and therefore increasing their income. And I can tell you that when TechServe Alliance asked me to become involved in the certification program, my only requirement when I was going to do the best practices, practical application part of the program was that I wanted to make sure that the training was going to make the companies that participated more successful, that it was going to put money back in your pockets. And the training that I'm going to do today on Best Business is a sampling of the type of training that is included in the study guide of best practices for the certification program. So let's get to our second topic today, which is your best clients. Your prospects and clients are going to judge you on one thing, and that's the ability to provide results. When you write certain engineering or IT contracts or orders, you know your recruiting team is going to fill them. And you know when you write the business that it's going to be filled is because the opportunity is within your niche, the opportunity represents your area of expertise, and you've filled this type of position in the past. Obviously, another thing we could put here is the company that you're representing is a company that people want to work for, so it's not hard for you to sell the opportunity. There are also contracts and orders that end up being a waste of time, a waste of time for your recruiting team and your clients. These could include contracts and orders where specs are just not commensurate with the pay rate or the salary being offered. Contracts or orders are out of your area of specialization or niche. You have no rapport or history of success in generating revenue with this type of company. And again, another thing I would add here, it could be a company that has a very bad reputation where people don't want to work there. And so I think it's important for us to realize that, that impacts the inability to fill, orders or contracts just as much as the 3 things that are listed on this screen. The easiest way to determine your best business is to study where you have been successful in not only writing, but filling contracts or orders in the past 18 to 24 months. This is called revenue modeling. Only study where sales were generated. I'm going to give you an example. I'm doing some consulting for an owner, and he has a lot of VMS clients, and he basically told me that they work on roughly 58 titles on a very consistent basis. And I said, do you fill 58 titles? And he said, yes. And he said, it's just, we have to work everything because of the quarterly report card. We've got to keep our rating up. And yes, we work on 58 openings. And I had him go back and do revenue modeling and really look at where they were making fills, because these were all IT contractors that were being placed. And when he came back, I said to him that I would be willing to bet that 75% of your business is less than 10 titles. Well, 90% of his business was 5 titles. And he came back going, I can't believe this. Like, we're working all these titles, and yet 90% of our business is 5 or 6 titles. He goes, I just had no idea. And so I went back and had him look at, well, how many of those 5 or 6 titles are you placing? What percentage? And he was only placing 30-some% of those 5 or 6 titles because he was working on everything else. And to give you, a real-life example of what happened is he had his recruiters start to pipeline those 6 titles that they knew they were filling, okay, that's where most of their fills were. And then he had his sales team really go out and try to write more of those exact titles, those 5 or 6 titles. And now his company, within 6 months, is filling 75% of the contracts and orders they're writing in those 6 titles. So you can only imagine what happened to sales and profits, because now the recruiting team knew where to fill the pipeline, and the sales team knew what business to go after. Now, obviously, on a VMS client, you're still submitting candidates on some of the other titles. But, the VMS, it was interesting because he was worried, if they got too focused. But the VMS clients were thrilled now, too, because they're filling 75% of those 6 openings. So they know every time they give this firm one of those 6 titles, it's done. I mean, they know where their expertise is, even though they're putting some attention to the other orders. So when it comes to best business, don't look at where you're writing orders or contracts. Look at what business you're filling. And when you look at the business, you're going to look at the industry and, what was the job title? What was the bill and pay rate? Or what was the fee if you're doing direct placement? What location? How soon are your invoices paid? Because when you're looking at best business, you're also looking at clients that pay you on a very consistent basis. But, before you go out there and make your next sales call, and recruiters, if you want to fill more of the business that's being written, it's important that you do this. You go back 18 or 24 months and really study what business you're filling. Let's talk about your best candidates. Your candidates are going to judge you on your ability to place them in a job. The interesting thing is I do calls every week for job seekers, and they don't know that I own a staffing and recruiting firm. They have no idea. 100% of the individuals who send you a resume or contact your company expect you to find them an IT or engineering opportunity. So the expectation of the candidate is that if they send you their paperwork, they expect you to find them a job. For this reason, it is so important that you understand your best business so you can increase the number of candidates you place. Again, you're judged on your ability to provide top talent that will be hired versus the numbers of orders or contracts that you work. And see, when you're a recruiter and you're working the candidate side of the sale, you have to understand how dependent the sales team is on your ability to find talent. You've got your salespeople out there calling on these clients on a consistent basis. And if they've given them business and the business is not being filled, you can only begin to imagine how uncomfortable it is when they're back at the same company trying to generate more business when you're not filling a majority of the orders that they're writing. That's why for both the account executive and the recruiter, it is so important that you're on the same page. Best candidates should meet the following criteria. They should be able to provide you with a resume or a CV. They should possess the skills and the experience, the certifications that are required in education. Their experience should be in sync with the money requested. You know as a recruiter that often you'll have a candidate and you're looking at their title or their experience and you're looking at the money they're requesting and you realize, wait a minute, they're asking for much more money than an individual, at their level would be earning. Or maybe you look at the job titles and then you look at the description of what what they're doing and you realize the job title makes no sense. So when you're looking at the best candidates, and the people that you're going to submit, you want to make sure that all of this, is basically in line. They're available for interviews, and they're available to start within the time frame of your clients. And the reason you have to have all of this to have a best candidate is even if somebody does have the skills and experience and education and certifications, if they're not available for interviews or they're not looking to make a change for 2 months, then obviously you're not going to send them on a contract that has immediate need. Timing, I always say in real estate, it was always location. I came out of the real estate profession, and everything was location, location, location. And recruiting, it's all about the timing. So these things must exist in order for somebody to be determined as one of your best candidates. There's also inside information that only recruiters can provide. When you understand the best business for your company, okay, and again, this is information you can get from your account executives, your salespeople, you can go back and study, what business was filled yourself, but you can also provide leads from candidates that you interview. It is important that you ask candidates, give me the 5 companies you want to work for and why. See, it's not just enough to find out where they want to work, it's why do they want to work there, because that would help your sales team go out there and make very educated, prepared sales calls. I don't believe that any of you should be making cold calls right now. With social media, with the internet, with the amount of information that you have available where you can look up companies and look up information on people, all of our calls should be warm, prepared calls. But if when you ask this, give me the companies you want to work for and why, you're going to start getting the names of the same companies over and over and over again, because those are the companies that are most desired. And obviously, if your company can represent them, it gives you a much better chance of filling the orders. You've also got to ask the 5 companies they would never work for and why. I also speak in front of, audiences of IT and engineering contractors, and it's interesting. Often they will say to me, we have recruiters call us, and they tell us about the great opportunity they're representing, and then they talk about a company that we know is a terrible place to work, and we would never work there. And basically what the recruiter has done or the account executive has done is lost total credibility with us. And so that's why you've got to start asking these questions. Because another thing, think about this. If you're identifying companies that nobody wants to work for, think how easy it is going to be for you to go in there and pull people out of that company and place them at better companies. So it's a great resource to go in and basically attract talent for the openings that you do have with good companies. This information should be shared with your account executives so they can target the best companies to represent, that also fit the criteria of the best business of your company, though. So if candidates want to work for a company, but that company does not fit the best business that we just talked about earlier, it's not what you do, it's not in your niche, it's not where you've been making placements and fills, you're not going to go over, after that business. You only want to pursue the business that kind of mirrors your successful business that you've had so far. The quickest way for all of you to be more successful, whether you're an account executive or you're a recruiter, is to duplicate the type of business that you've been successful in filling in the last 3 months, the last 6 months. Because you and I both know when you're working on something, often candidates surface after the fact. And you're thinking, where were you a month ago? Where were you 2 months ago? So if you keep writing the same type of business, and the same type of opportunities, you've got candidates in your database. And truthfully, salespeople, when you walk into the office and you've got business that you've written, you don't want the recruiters to roll their eyes like, oh my God, this is mission impossible. We're never going to be able to fill this. You want them excited about the business that's being written, and you also want them to be able to, anticipate the business you're bringing in. You've got to communicate with each other so that your recruiters, by the time you bring in business, especially with your high-volume VMS accounts, there's no time to go out there and network. You can only present people that you're currently representing because, you might have a 24-hour window, or you might have today at 3 o'clock, and you can only submit 3 candidates. And that's why the more that you identify your best business and best candidates, the more business you're going to fill. And again, it's not, your success is not based on the numbers of contracts you write or the number of consultants that you surface. It's how much business are you filling? How many consultants are you actually putting out there to work? Lastly, let's discuss the best version of you. okay? If you have a health issue, you know, most likely you're going to seek out an expert. You're going to seek out somebody who specializes in a particular field in addition to the initial, MD that they earned. If you go to a dentist, you're going to verify that they're a DDS. You know, you want your accountant to be a CPA. Think about this. If you're going out there, you want to hire individuals to work for you that have proved their expertise in their field. When your clients are hiring IT and engineering talent, they often require certain certifications in addition to specific degrees. And in this competitive marketplace, degrees and certifications are great differentiators. You know yourself that sometimes you have a great candidate, but they don't have a certification, so you can't send them. They're not your best candidate. You are in a very competitive profession, and you want to differentiate yourself from your competition. And so to obtain the best version of you, you need to adapt to change and continually improve your skill sets so you can better serve the clients and candidates that you represent. If you don't like change, you have got to get over yourself. Technology has changed the way that we do our business. You know, I have been in this business for more than 25 years, and I've seen more changes in the last 2 years than I've seen in the last 20 years. And that's going to continue to happen. And see, if you don't adapt, and if you don't change, and if you don't use new resources, and if you don't look at the way you're working your desk and really come up with ideas to implement, eventually your competition is going to run right over you. And I want you all to think for a minute, look at your year-to-date income right now, because your owner didn't write your paycheck, you did. When you think about it, our profession is very performance-based. And so if you're looking at what you earned this year and you hear yourself saying, well, I thought I was going to earn more money, or I really want to earn more money, I thought I was going to be more successful, you have to point back at yourself, what can you do different? Because if you don't change some things up, like if you come to these webinars and you listen to them and then you go back to your desk and you work the same way, or you get back in your car and you go make sales calls and you make them the exact same way, and you don't take time to study your best business, you don't take time to focus on where you know you can be more successful, chances are next year at this time your paycheck is going to read the exact same total. And so when I do these sessions, I met many of you at the TechServe Alliance conference. And by the way, if any of you listening to me did not, any owners on this phone, if you did not have a chance to attend the TechServe conference that was held recently in California, you really want to look at the possibility of attending the conference next year at Amelia Island in Florida, because I heard so many owners at the TSA conference that it was a life-changing event. It was the educational conferences and the educational breakouts and that, but it was also the interaction with other owners that was just worth its weight in gold. And so, being certified, attending the conferences, are just two of the ways that TechServe Alliance really does offer you an opportunity to get better at what you do. But if you're listening to these calls, showing up is step number one. Implementing something when we get off the phone is what you have to do next. That's when these calls are really valuable. One very effective way, obviously, to differentiate yourself is to either obtain your CPSR certification for recruiters or your CPSAE for account executives, and make a commitment to a lifetime of learning as you earn continuing education credits. Because once you have your certification, then you have to maintain your certification by earning continuing education units, no different than a lot of the certifications that are held by the people that you place in jobs. And so it shows everybody that you're working with, that you've made this lifetime commitment to training so you can better serve them. Not everybody can say that. The best version of you represents the person you not only are today, but what you're capable of achieving in the future. And I can tell you that, I was listening to Alan Below, who always speaks at the TechServe Alliance conference, and the future looks extremely bright for what you do for a living. It is a wonderful time to be in this profession. So when you look at 2016, make sure you've written down your goals. Make sure that you know exactly where you're going next year, what you're trying to achieve. Because if you haven't written it down, if you don't have 10 non-negotiable goals written down with action items that are dated under each goal, they become New Year's resolutions. So, make sure you study your best business, but this time of the year, make sure you're also writing down 10 non-negotiable goals with 5 dated action items. So 2016 truly is going to be a record year for all of you. It's not enough just to want a great year next year. You know, you've got to do something to make it happen. You've got to change the way you're working. You've got to kind of flip off that automatic pilot that you're on at work. We're all creatures of habit, and figure out some ideas and some things, actions you're going to take, and do your new action for 21 days so it replaces an old habit with a new habit. It takes 21 days of repetition to actually, you know, replace an old habit. So, you know, my advice to you is go through this session, listen to this again, figure out what ideas you can implement from this session, and also in the next week, make sure you write down your 10 non-negotiable goals with 5 dated action items for 2016. Post them where you work, and you're never going to have to look to somebody else to motivate you, because you're going to be motivated for what you're trying to achieve for yourself and the people that you love. And so again, this is just a sampling of the type of training we do in the study guide for the certification program. If you want additional information on certification, you can either, you know, contact that email, certification@techservealliance.org, or you can call Susan or Jenny at the number you see on the screen. They're there to answer your questions. And the nice part about it is the certification is online. You can take the exam, you know, within 6 months after you've taken, you know, after you've gone through the study guide. You do not have to wait for conference, or you do not have to wait for a prep program. There are prep programs that are scheduled by many of the chapters throughout the country, but you don't have to do that. Many people are, you know, they basically read the study guide, they go through it a second or third time, make sure they know it, and they take the exam, and they're doing very well. So I would encourage anybody, you know, what a great goal that would be for 2016, that one of your 10 goals is that you will attain your your professional certification. What I want to do now is open the call for your questions, because I feel that's, you know, more important than the training that I deliver, is what's most important to you. You can ask me questions one of two ways. You can go to the attendee list and find your name. If you called on a landline and if you dialed in the number, put the access code in and put the PIN number in, click that little yellow hand and I can unmute your lines and you and I can talk. I do ask you only to click that hand if you're on a landline, because cell phones have too much echoing. If you called in on a cell and you want to ask a question, you can go down below and see the word question. Just click that plus sign next to the word question, and it opens a dialog box. And then just type in your question. Now, I will always use your first name. If you don't want me to use your first name, if you want me to answer the question confidentially, then before you type your question in, just put the word confidential or anonymous, and I'll be sure not to use your name when I answer your question. So let me see if any of you raised your hand. Let me go to the attendees first and see if anybody raised their hand. I see no hands being raised. Okay, let me go down to the questions and see if any questions. Okay. Barb, how much time does it take to get through the study guide? And this is from Julie. I don't know, Julie. It depends on you know, your capability of reading and retaining information. I would say that you should at least allow yourself a couple weeks to go through the study guide at least twice. The first time I would say read it through, go through the whole entire study guide. The study guide is divided into industry practices, best practices for both recruiters and account executives, and then the legal. And everybody takes the same industry practices and legal, and then there's a different exam for the recruiters and a different exam for the account executives. Let's see. I'm in Canada. How much of the training is U.S. specific, dealing with U.S. issues when working with contractors? The exam, again, was written, you know, for the United States, Joanne, so I think the legal part of the exam, you know, is really U.S. focused. The best practices part of the exam and industry practices, so best practices is 2/3 of the exam. And that absolutely would work in Canada as well as the United States. So the best practices are totally applicable for both. The industry practices would be, you know, for both Canada and the United States. The only area where you would be learning information that is not necessarily, and of course it depends on which province you're in, because some of your provinces have different regulations as well. So, you know, the legal part of this, which is only about 20% of the exam, you know, might be a little bit different than what you're currently doing in Canada. But would it be worth it to you to take the certification program because of the best practices and for both, you know, recruiters and account executives as well as industry practices? It would be. But the laws themselves, Joanne, are a little bit different, obviously. and especially in some of your provinces than they are in the United States. So that would be the only area where you would have to actually learn. I think there's 10 laws. There's 10 laws in the legal study guide, and so there's only 10 laws that you have to learn. And would it be worth your time to basically get the other knowledge in that? I would say yes. Are you concerned that a lot of the larger clients are leaning toward bringing on internal recruiting staff and getting away from the use of agencies? I'm not finding that at all, Mark. I think there's been, it's interesting because I can tell you years ago we were worried that, that classified ads were going to replace recruiters. And then when Monster and Career Builder and Dice and all those job boards came in, we were so concerned that job boards were going to replace recruiters. And then, and again, human resource departments, it's interesting. When I started, it was personnel, then it became human resource, and now it's talent acquisition. Talent acquisition departments have always had recruiters, and they're not going to use you for everything. But the good news is, Mark, that according to Career Builder, by the year 2020, over 50% of the workforce is going to be working as contractors or temporary workers. And that's the highest level it's ever been. And quite frankly, the internal recruiting teams, can't keep up with it. And the internal recruiting teams, when people want to hire contractors, often it's not necessarily just the 1099 contractors. It's the contractors that are on your payroll. And so, again, that's not something that they can do with their internal recruiting team. And so, no, I don't see the internal recruiting team replacing you at all. I think that you're complementing the internal recruiting team, and you're showing them candidates that they're not getting from job boards or they're not getting from website postings. And that's why, as a recruiter, if you don't want to be replaced, Mark, you've got to be going out there and finding talent that they're not finding on their own. You've got to build a network. If you've been doing this longer than 18 months, 50% of your candidate flow should be referrals. And I want to repeat that again. If you've been a recruiter in this profession for more than 18 months, over 50% of your candidates should be referrals. And if that's not the case, then you have to look at two things. You have to look at the touch program you have after you put somebody out in a job. If they're working on a contract, are they hearing from you for, over a consistent basis? Are paychecks being delivered to them? Are you in touch with them? Are you talking? Are you taking care of them? People want to feel nurtured. What happens too often is you place a contractor on a job and then you don't call them until 60 days before their contract's over, and at that point they don't like you and they have something else lined up. So you have to look at your touch program if you're not getting referrals, or do you have a referral process? There has to be a process in place. Most recruiters don't get referrals because they don't have a referral process. And so I would ask you, again, if you have candidates that the internal recruiting team can't find on their own, you will never be out of a job. If anything, I see our profession flourishing because nobody can keep up with the aging baby boomers that are retiring and the talent that's going overseas, and the great need. When you look at think about the number of orders you're writing that you're not filling. Look at that. Don't worry about the internal recruiting team. Look at all the business that's being written that you're not even filling. That's what you have to worry about. How do you fill more of the business that you're writing? And believe me, with the lack of top talent, those internal recruiting teams are not going to replace you. So, again, you've got to look at, and again, are they always going to have an internal recruiting team? Sure they are. Are they going to use job boards and website postings? Yes, they are, but you're in addition to that. Let's see, how much time on the phone do you think it should take a recruiter when contacting a candidate for the first time to determine if they are an unplaceable candidate and get off the phone versus continuing to talk to them? I'll tell you what, Joanne, that first conversation, and especially when you're dealing with some candidates, they're getting so many calls from recruiters that they don't even want to talk to you for 2 seconds. I mean, they're blowing you off in the first 30 seconds after you get on the phone with them. And so a lot of it is not how much time should you take, it's how much time are they going to give you. And so I think the first thing you have to think about, Joanne, is what are you saying very early in the conversation that sets you apart from everybody else they're talking to have them feel that they could be confident about your ability to represent them. And then, yes, you have to ask a few screening questions that you determine, if in fact this is somebody that you're going to place in a job or not. Because right now, recruiters are placing roughly 5% of the people that we attract. and the other 95% either don't have the skills, stability, experience. If you can get a resume, or a CV, if you can, log onto their LinkedIn profile real quick and see their background, if you've got information in front of you. But you're right, you want to ask some screening calls because you want to get off the phone. You don't want to keep talking if in fact you cannot help them. It's not fair to them either. You don't want to, you don't want to take their time if you're going to do nothing for them. And my theory has always been provide them with resources. Provide them with resources, give them something to do. Because on average, think about this for a minute, on average, the average recruiter is spending 90 minutes a day taking calls, taking incoming calls, status calls, providing free consulting, and interviewing people they're never going to place in a job. And so that's your biggest time waster. And so come up with a resource, come up with resources you can send them to, things for them to do, that can help them find a job. We've got a resource that you might want to look at. It's called happycandidates.com. You might go to that site. That gives a resource that you can send them to that will help them find a job and have them quit calling you. This is confidential. After you identify an ideal client, connect with them, and they tell you they're not in need of help right now. How aggressive should you be in getting them to give you a shot? What I would do in this case is, when they say we're not in need of help right now, I would come back and say, is there anybody you would like to upgrade? You have to think that right now job satisfaction is at historic lows. Right now job satisfaction is under 20%. I don't ever remember it being this low, ever. And I've been doing this 25 years. And so right now, if you look at any survey out there, there's like an 82% job dissatisfaction rate. And there's no, people are just not, they're just not tied into their jobs right now. There's a tremendously high percentage of job dissatisfaction. So basically, 8 out of 10 people would make a change if given the opportunity. So I have to ask you, what type of job are they doing? If I'm not happy, I'm not doing a good job, I'm not happy at my company, I'm probably not doing the greatest job because I'm keeping my feelers open. I was on a plane about a month ago, and there was an article, and I think it was USA Today, that said the average person is on the job boards less than a month after they take a new job. That's scary, that the internet has made it so easy for people to look for something else, okay? And so if you ask an employer, is there anybody you'd like to upgrade? If they say we're not in need, what I would do is one of two things. I would say, is there anybody currently working for you that you would like to upgrade? Because the answer to that is almost always yes. Or then I would say, let me ask you a question. What is your most difficult position to fill? What I do for my main clients is I'm their eyes and ears out there. And if there's a position that you have a hard time filling, if I get somebody with that experience, do you want me to pick up the phone? Or do you have a competitor you respect? And if I get anybody out of that competitor, do you want me to pick up the phone and call you? So ask a couple better questions. It's not that you're going to get aggressive and say, well, but give me a chance now, and they might say, another thing you could say when they say, I don't really need anything right now, I'm not hiring right now, I've got resources that I'm using, say something like, that's the exact same thing my best client said the first time I called them. And I earned my way to be their #1 provider of top talent. I'd love to do the same thing for you. Give yourself a little bit of a testimonial. That's the exact same thing, that my best client said to me the first time I called on them. And then they realized that I could help them upgrade people that were marginal. I could keep my eyes and ears open for people that, represent their hardest to fill positions. You got to get great at asking questions that nobody else is asking. Let's see, what do you think is best approach to get referrals from our candidates? Referral fees, anything else? I think you've got to give them something to replace. People do things for their own reason, Joanne. It's no different than the reason you're on the phone today with me is you're hoping I'm going to give you some information that can help you be better at what you're doing, okay? So we're all kind of that what's in it for me. So if you want to get referrals from your candidates, there has to be some type of compensation, something that they're getting because, will some people give you a referral to be nice? They might, but they'll really give you referrals if they've got something, that they're getting as a result of giving you the referral. The other thing, too, is I want you all to keep something in mind. You will normally get more referrals from people you don't place than the people you place out on contract or on a direct assignment, a direct job. And for years, I've never understood that. Like, why do we get more referrals from the people we haven't placed? Like, I would think that the people we place out on contract would give us more referrals. They give us referrals, but we get a lot of referrals from people that we've never placed, and I think it's because they still want something from us. So don't only work the people you're placing out on contract. Anybody that you're representing, you have to assure them that this person is not going to be their competition, because often people won't give you referrals because they don't want to give you their competition. And you have to say, that I track, what referrals you give me, and I will never put, one of your referrals in competition with you for an opportunity. You would always have the first right of refusal on anything that we would get in that would fit both of you. So you have to, and you really have to have a process, know what you're going to say, when you're going to say it. Let's see, this is from Marion. If a candidate is passively searching and not available to interview during the day, especially a face-to-face, how do I share that information with the client that they have limited availability to interview? I think in today's day and age, Marion, a lot of people will arrange for a Skype interview. And often during the day, your candidate can take a lunch hour. They can do that. And what I want you to think about is if your candidate had an abscessed tooth, what would they do? They would take time off work to interview. You have to watch when people say, I can't interview at all during the day, I'm not available. You have to wonder how serious they are about really making a change. Because if they had an abscessed tooth or they had a personal issue come up or something happened, they would take some time off work. But the other option is to try to get them on Skype. Most of them have, a laptop, a tablet. They can get on Skype and do a Skype interview during their lunchtime interview. And many clients are, willing to do a Skype interview versus a face-to-face. But if you have clients that only want to do a face-to-face and only want to do it during the day, then obviously this candidate is somebody that you can't present to them because, their availability to interview to me really does show their level of interest in making a change. Because if I'm really interested in doing something, I'm going to make time. I'm going to make the time. So that's kind of a red flag that they're not available to interview at all during the day. Again, they have to eat, they have to take off, and something could happen, or could they go in late? Could they go in an hour or two late or leave an hour or two early? That's one of the ways we test their level of interest. And the other thing I want you to use on the candidate, and all of you use this when you're talking to clients and use this when you're talking to candidates. When you're trying to determine interest level on anybody's part, use on a scale of 1 to 10. Because if you say you're interested, yes, I'm interested in making a change. On a scale of 1 to 10, well, a 4. I'm kind of happy where I'm at. If you use on a scale of 1 to 10, you're not second-guessing the level of interest of your clients or candidates. It quantifies it. So use numbers when you're asking about level of interest or time frame or this type of thing on a scale of 1 to 10. And give them examples. Like in the case of this candidate, if an emergency happened, a personal emergency, could you go in an hour late or leave an hour early? Is your next career move as important to you as a dental appointment or something that you might have to take time off for? So give them an example, and often you will see that they can make arrangements. That's just a red flag. Let's see. I see no more questions. Let me see if there's any other hands being raised. By the way, these were great questions. I do see a hand raised. Hold on a second. Joe, I'm going to unmute your line. Joe, I have you unmuted. Did you have another question? Joe, last name C. Did you have another question? Okay, I hear noise, but I don't hear Joe, so I'm going to mute that line. Let's see. He took his hand down. I don't see any other hands. We've got a few more minutes if anybody has any additional questions. Let's see here. What do you suggest as to how to technically screen candidates? We find most senior and intermediates don't want to do a test for a recruitment firm, as they are called by many recruitment firms, and then do a test for each of our clients. And again, that is tough, Joanne, and the only way that you can screen, obviously the many companies that can help you do the technical screening, and there's some really good ones out there that can have it, but you're right. These candidates are called by many recruiters. The last thing they want to do is go through testing, and then basically they're tested again, by the clients. And so, and especially the candidates that are hard to find. And in IT and engineering, there's so many of those that they know they're in demand, and so they're refusing to take the technical test. What I would do is really verify their technical expertise through reference checking, and basically, and what you could do is, if you've got some definite questions that are kind of screening questions that you can ask, that really can sort of test their technical knowledge. I come up in lieu of a test. If you've got great candidates that don't want to go through the actual testing with some of those resources that you may have available, then come up with 3 to 5 questions that will reveal if a person has the knowledge or not. Because if they don't have, a certain skill set, they're not going to be able to answer your questions either. So, if they're not willing to take the test, come up with some screening questions, and I would explain to the clients that these candidates are in high demand. They're being called by numerous people, and they don't mind being tested by you, but they don't want us to test them as well as you testing them. They don't want to take that time, unless they're interested or actually in front of a client. But we've asked some screening questions, or you can even ask the clients, what would you like me to ask them in lieu of a test, to test that they've got exactly what you want? What questions would you like me to ask them during the interviews that can verify the level of expertise they have in certain areas? And, come up with some really solid questions that can also reveal the level of expertise they have in certain areas. Let's see here. Do you have any good examples or advice on building trusting relationships with potential clients, cold business leads? The best way to build trusting relationships is to learn everything about your client. Initially, you're going to start out as a vendor, Joe. You're going to be strictly a vendor, okay? And they're not going to trust you. There's no rapport. They're not going to trust you. You're going to be one of the many people that they're starting with, that they're utilizing. But you've got to talk differently. You've got to say, I started out as a backup to my best clients. I used my, it was my performance that I became their top resource for talent. And then you've got to come up with your personal brand, Joe. Why should somebody use you? So if you want to build trust and rapport with these people, you've got to know why they should use you as opposed to anybody else. And it can't be the same things that everybody else says. We have the best clients. We've been in business X amount of years. What can Joe say? What can you say? What is your track record with your current companies? The other thing is testimonials from the current clients that you're working with, or if you can go to your current clients and get referred business. That referred business, trust and rapport get established much quicker when you've been referred to somebody by a client you're currently representing. That's the fastest way to build trust and rapport. But if you really want to go, you've got to start it as a vendor, end up being a trusted advisor. Tell them, my goal is to be your trusted advisor. My goal is to be the best listener in your life. My goal is to be your top provider of talent. I'm a workplace expert. I want to be your sounding board. And then let them talk about themselves. Know where they went to school, know how many kids they have, know what they like and what they don't like. If you let somebody else talk about themselves, they will like you more. And keep three things in mind. People want to know three things. They want to know, number one, if they can trust you, number two, if you care about them, and number three, if you're going to do what you're telling them you're going to do. If you can focus on those three things with anybody, eventually it builds trust and it'll build a relationship. But it has to happen over time. And again, the more you know about them, the more you know about their family and you know about them personally, the better chance you have of really becoming their friend. And when it comes to clients, that's exactly what you want to become. It's not enough just to be a consultant to them. It's not enough to be a trusted advisor. You want to elevate that then to friendship. Because if they really, view you as a friend, wherever they go, they will take you with them. And clients are leaving more now than they've ever left before. They're just leaving companies faster. So you want to have 2 to 3 contacts also in every client. So if your contact leaves, you don't lose the account. This is great advice. Well, thank you. I'm getting a lot of thank yous now, and this is great advice, and I greatly appreciate it. Again, this is a sampling of the type of training that, again, is in that study guide that was written by me. Let's see. How do you break into the contract business when you're used to permanent business? Joanne, that's a whole session. It's funny because I talked to somebody this morning that is trying to do exactly that. They're doing direct business. They realize the benefit of contract placement because it's that reoccurring revenue model. But, there's so much to that, Joanne, on how you break into the contract business. I mean, it's where I would start, just to give you some quick advice, is I would just go to your current clients and ask them what type of contractors they're hiring, because the people that are hiring direct hires from you in your permanent business are also hiring contractors. They're just hiring them through somebody else. So, what you need to do is find out what type of contractors are being hired by your current clients and then position yourself to, to provide those types of contractors. But, again, the contract business is that reoccurring revenue model that greatly enhances the value of a business. So anybody listening to me that's only doing direct business, you really want to think about adding contract staffing to your business model because it just greatly enhances your business. Who would I ask, as I usually deal with HR? It's HR often that hires the contractors, but you've got to learn. There's so much more to the business, Joanne. I mean, you're going to have to really learn the business And again, there's so much more information. If you want, again, we might be able to help you with this. If you want to send me an email to support@staffingandrecruiting.com, I can answer more of these questions offline. This would be like it'd be more than an hour session to learn the business. But there's so much more to the contract business than just, I don't want to give you some answers that are going to lead you in the wrong way. So if you want to reach out to me at support@staffingandrecruiting.com, feel free to do that, and I'll try to help you offline. Let's see. All right, let me see if there's any hands being raised. These are great questions, and you're helping everybody on the line. Let's see. Are we able to download the slides? You're not able to download the slides, Joe, but TechServe Alliance does, save this program. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to turn the call back to Jenny, and she's going to tell you, where you can listen to this call, because this call is being recorded, and it's going to be saved where you can access it. So as soon as I'm done with the questions, I'll turn this back to Jenny, and she can basically tell you how to access this program. And again, this is just one of the ways that TechServe Alliance is trying to provide education for their members, and the one thing I say about TechServe Alliance over and over and over again is TechServe nurtures all of you. When you're asking me how do you get the candidates you need to represent, how do you get better relationships with your clients, treat them the way that TechServe treats their members. TechServe is all about nurturing, educating, making sure you have what you need, and then in return, you can give your candidates and clients what they need, and so what I will, let's see, I've got another one. Any good reasons for email marketing campaigns, sales templates? I think that you have to look at what you're sending out and look at the subject lines, because 80% of emails being sent out are not being read. And the ones that are being read are the ones that have a compelling subject line. And so what I would tell all of you to do, this is a great time of year to do it, is look at everything you're sending out and read it as if you were getting it. If you were a candidate getting the emails you sent out or the templated sales emails that you send out, if you were getting them, would you delete them? Would you even open them? Are your subject lines compelling, or would you just, would they end up in spam? So I think we've got to communicate in all ways. I think that we have to have more phone conversations, because that's when you learn the most. But you've got to text people. You've got to reach out to them through LinkedIn. You've got to email. Direct mail is really working for marketing. It's amazing. If you want to get the attention of a hiring authority, send something in direct mail, put their name and title on it in the bottom left-hand corner of the envelope, put personal and confidential. Then they'll open it. Nobody else will open that. So because nobody is sending direct mail, that's becoming very effective right now. I mean, it's a crazy marketplace out there, but I think you've got to communicate using all means of communication possible, okay? Chat rooms, meetups. I mean, you've got to go where your candidates and clients are hanging out. You've got to find them and go where they are. So there's so many ways to communicate, but I do think that every third contact with an individual should be a phone conversation, and you might say they don't want to talk to us. When I talk to them, when I talk to the IT and engineering contractors, I'm at conferences that they're at, and they say, we'll talk to the people that know what they're doing. We just won't talk to the people that we don't like. We won't talk to recruiters who we don't think know what they're doing. They all sound alike. But if somebody sounds like they know what they're doing, yeah, we'll talk to them. So it's not them saying they won't talk to you. You're not giving them a compelling reason to talk to you. So that's really the bottom line. Let's see. I'm getting a bunch of thank yous now from everybody. And again, it's my honor. I love when TechServe Alliance gives me the opportunity to provide training for all of you, because I love the organization. I think the TechServe Alliance, again, does a great job for their members, and these webinars are just, again, something they want to do monthly. And I just got a notice from them that we're going to continue these webinars all next year. So we were just going to do these through this month, and they're going to be scheduling webinars through next year. So we're going to be doing these things monthly, which is wonderful. I'm now, I guess, going to turn this over again. If you've got any questions on certification, you've got the information in front of you. I have one more question, Joanne. On the sales side, how do you deal with a client with a lot of hiring needs that wants a bulk rate of 16% when we normally charge 20% for our perm? When somebody has a lot of hiring needs, that could mean that they have great turnover in direct placement. So I would never give a discount for a bunch of orders. I just would never. I might give a discount for every third hire. And so if you're going to discount, because somebody could give you 10 openings and you only fill one and you're charging 16%, and so you lose. You know, when they have multiple openings, that doesn't mean you're going to get multiple hires. So what I would suggest you do is give a significant reduction for every third hire that they do in a calendar year. And that encourages them to hire from you. I would not discount for a high volume of orders because that doesn't guarantee you make a dime. Okay, that's our last question. And so if you have any questions on certification, you see the, oh wait, I have one more question. Sorry, let's see. Is there different certifications for full desk recruiters? Yes, Joe, there's two certifications. One is CPSR, and that's the recruiter certification, and one is CPSAE, and that's the certification for account executives. They both take the same industry practices. They both take the same legal, and then they take a different exam for CPSR and a different exam for CPSAE. We do have people that are double certified that have taken both. And so if you need information on that, then this person that's doing new business development, Joe, would take the CPSAE, the certification for account executives, because developing new business comes under account executive and sales more than it does recruiting. So that person would take account executive. But what I would suggest you do is call TechServe, talk to Jenny, talk to Susan, and ask them your questions because you know, they can absolutely walk you through this. Okay, I have something from Kim. This was very informative. I learned a lot. This is some of the best training and information that I've received this year. Thank you for your time. Well, Kim, you just made my day, so thank you for your comments. I greatly appreciate that. Okay, Jenny, I think I'm going to turn the call over to you now.
All right, thanks, Barb. And thank you, everyone, for participating in the 2015 certification webinar series. As Barb mentioned, we're going to be continuing this certification series into 2016. It'll still be a monthly series. We will be releasing the 2016 certification webinar series schedule in the near future. Now, the 2016 certification webinar series will require a new registration, but once you're registered, just like in 2015, you'll be registered for all of the sessions for the year. And Barb, I would like to say thank you for all of your help this year, and thank you for the great webinar today on behalf of TechServe Alliance and everyone attending. Thank you very much, Barb.
Right, and have a great holiday, everybody, and let's really work at having a record year. And please, when you get off this phone, think of a change you're going to make. Implement something. Just showing up for the call is step one. You got to implement something, and then this will really be worth your time. So have a wonderful holiday season, and I look forward to training all of you next year as well. And thanks, Jenny, for the opportunity to conduct these webinars.
And everyone, we will be sending out an email with today's slides and a link of today's presentation, along with a link to the certification webpage. You can also download the slides and view today's webinar on our online learning center. It'll be posted in about a week following today's webinar. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Happy holidays.